And Renee, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about the context of where you're speaking from and coming from?
Sure, and I want to thank you for the invitation to come and speak today and share about our programs. Elk Grove Adult and Community Education's Correctional Education Program. So unlike in Brian's program where they're associated with a community college, we are part of a K-12 district, the Elk Grove Unified School District. And for the past about 40 years, we have partnered with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department to offer educational programming to the 2 county jail facilities in Sacramento. So the programming that we offer is academic. We offer English as a second language, adult basic education, GED education preparation, and GED testing. We also offer parenting through a program called Parenting Inside Out. It's an evidence-based program that we've recently adopted. And we have several, as Brian does, career technical education fields, career pathways that we have developed. And so some of ours are the horticulture and landscaping, computer-aided design that we were able to start as part of a Second Chance Act Technology Careers Grant. We also have cook training, cake decorating, computer applications, and custodial training. We serve approximately 2,650 inmates annually. Any inmates that are coming into our facility who have 60 days or more on their sentence can enroll in our programs, and everybody with 60 days or more is given an individual action plan, or they go through an individualized action plan with a social worker as they come into the facility. And that individualized action plan looks at their employment history, their education history, their barriers to success, and also, as part of that intake process, we do CASAS literacy-based testing. So as a result of the 2 of those assessments, students are placed on one of 3 tracks: an education track, a treatment track, or a work track. Typically, those people that are in the jail for a longer term, and we try and focus on the education and the treatment, usually within the 2 years prior to release. So our goal as an education provider is to be able to transition our students to post-secondary and or career, and we've really, over the last couple of years, as a result of the Points of Entry demonstration project, been able to focus on transitions and really work with key partners in being able to make those transitions successful.
Great, thank you. As we talked a little bit about the joint memo that came out from the tri-agencies, but we've focused these webinars on a series of topics out of those 15 components. So I'll open it up for either of you to talk a little bit about how you've approached building strategic partnerships, and really also why having strategic partnerships is important to the success of your programs. Want to start with you, Renee?
Yeah, we can do that. I think that the partners are essential because we all have this common goal to be able to help our ex-offenders to be able to make that successful transition. So the community colleges have very different resources from adult education, which has very different resources from the Sacramento Employment and Training Agency or Center. So we have greatly, as a result of the Points of Entry demonstration project, tried to build an advisory board that gives us a lot of direction into our career pathways. So we work very closely with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department for obvious reasons, and they have helped us logistically to get through environmental barriers that maybe created roadblocks for students and kept them from success. We also work with the community-based organizations that come in to offer some of the cognitive behavior training and treatment programs. Sacramento Employment and Training Agency is our local workforce partner, and Cosumnes River College is the community college that is closest to our Rio Cosumnes Correctional Center and our Adult Education Center. So they were the natural college post-secondary partner. And then we also work very closely to transition students to our non-correctional Elk Grove Adult and Community Education program to be able to complete their basic skills training, to complete their GED preparation, and to be able to complete testing if they haven't been able to succeed. So I think having these partnerships provides more of an opportunity to offer wraparound services to inmates while they're in custody and then post-release when they're out.
Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think in building partnerships, one of the ways that we've addressed it is within instruction itself, within the classroom, and in having very strong advisory boards that are part of the design of our programs. I think the challenge in Washington State is that because we're community colleges, we kind of assume that it's going to be easy for our students to get onto our main campuses, but it's surprisingly difficult, and it's something that one of the advantages when we have 12 directors and 8 different community colleges providing these services. What we're trying to figure out is how to build that partnership with our main campuses, which is kind of illogical in a sense, because you'd expect us to have a really good partnership there. So one of the things that we've learned is that we have to partner with our own, within our own colleges to make sure that our student services is aware of our students, and to know that as our students leave, what appropriate programs there are for them, what they've done, and that's been an ongoing challenge.
If students aren't able to be served when they walk into our door, quite often this population will walk out and never return. So we had to develop a system, a referral system, that would make sure that students' needs were met when they walked in that door.
Yeah, and I think also it's building support from your community corrections, the offices of community corrections. I don't know how you've gone about doing that, but we have one area, one of our colleges, Edmonds Community College, has a good partnership with their local Department of Corrections officers that we're trying to then spread to other locations. But have you been able to successfully build?
I'm right there on the campus I'm right there on the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department Rio Cosumnes Correctional Center facility. So about 60% of my time is spent directly at that facility. And we schedule monthly meetings with the captain from the jail, as well as have daily interactions as to how things are going. So yeah, I would say that we have a very close partnership, but I think just our openness to learn from one another and to share challenges as well as successes has really helped to build that bridge with the administration as well as with the custody staff that are at the front lines with the students.
So for someone starting out who is kind of on the ground for the first time, what kind of practical tips might you have for them in beginning to reach out and build some partnerships?
Built into the Points of Entry demonstration grant was the need to be able to partner with these various entities. So it was natural that we reached out and said, we need a community college partner, we need a correctional partner, we need a workforce partner. And so that was kind of a natural reason to reach out, and people understood that and were behind that. It helped that I could offer them a trip to Washington. So you'll go to Washington for a couple days for a training, but that was fantastic because then we got to develop the relationships away from our jobs, away from everything else that we needed to pay attention to for a couple of days, and really got to gel as an advisory board. And we have continued to meet on a monthly basis, and so that's been a really positive thing for our program, and I think that's why we've seen the success that we've seen.
Right.
Well, I think one of the things that I learned is how there's a great deal of energy that people have in trying to make sure that our prison education programs are successful. So recently we've been working on developing partnerships with the Workforce Training Board in Washington State and with Employment Security, our one-stop resource. Because one of the challenges we have is that as inmates, before they release, they have very little information on career and occupational data for their counties. I was shocked at how easily I got to people who said, oh yeah, we'd love to be able to do that. We have to figure out the technical side of things, but there's a lot of support there, which I wasn't really expecting to get a lot of support for it. So I think that's one thing as a practical tip is to not assume that people are going to say no just because it's prison, and to think and to kind of go beyond that. And people want to help this population. So I think that's been really rewarding.
John, anything about partnership building? No? Okay. Let's move into talking a little bit about contextualized instruction, which is another core component of career pathways. Within your own programs, and Brian, we'll start with you this time, what does contextualized instruction look like?
I think in our case, contextualized instruction really focuses around iBest, where I have two instructors working together. I have a baking instructor who is in our bakery full-time, and then we have a basic skills instructor who's in the classroom 50% of the time. The Community College Research Center at Columbia recently released a report that showed that the more time that they have in the classroom together, the less time they need outside of the classroom for planning. So it almost makes me want to just have them overlap 100% of the time if I could afford it. It would make their lives a lot easier. That's really where we've done a lot of contextualized instruction. Your math is around baking, or all of your writing is in that field. In trying to create systems in our programs so that as students are in their GED classes, they have access to materials that are about an occupation that they're interested in. It's not ideal, but it at least gives them some access to that. I think going forward, where we're going to see it is that as iBest rolls out across the state in our state prison programs, because we have it at all of our community colleges already, we'll start to see things like our software development program be open to students who are still working on their GED. What it will do is it will compress the amount of time that it takes them to do all of that, but I think we'll just start to see that kind of, that style of instruction spread. Yeah.
And for those of you that are curious, we will get to funding here in a few minutes, because I'm sure that that's a question that's going to come up as to how Brian can afford to fund the instructors at the same time. But let's turn to you, Renee, and hear a little bit about what contextualized instruction looks like.
As part of the ESL, ABE, GED programming, we try to build in some vocational aspects to that training, so students have access to the Choices. This is a relatively new thing for us, but the Choices software, which offers career exploration and planning. We also have weekly employment and soft skills training sessions where someone from the community comes in and talks to our students for a 1-hour session once a week on job readiness and what to do when you're on the job, the soft skills components. Also, we recently adopted, about 1.5 years ago, the Aztec academic software, and that's been a really good thing for our classes. It offers us a blended approach to instruction, but it also allows for the career technical education instructors to build classes that embed those academic standards that are related to their industry. They're not the ones delivering the instruction, but they can give input, provide input to a particular class, a vocational ABE class. Let me give an example. Is if we have our landscaping instructor has, he knows that geometry is a key component of being able to do landscaping. And so he has built an Aztec class, or a class using the Aztec software, so that students, when they go into their ABE instruction, will be able to access the class that he built and learn those skills that they're going to need for the trade that they're training for. So that's one way that we've tried to contextualize it. Also, last year we participated in a training, and I think this is kind of a ground level way to get into the contextualized training. We went to a training that our California Adult Literacy Professional Development Project offered on integrated education and training, and that we brought an administrator, a teacher, and an ABE teacher and a CTE teacher to this training, and we, the goal of, I guess, on the exit of that program or training was students enroll in landscaping. It's a 30-hour program, but 9 of those hours are specifically ABE within that 30 hours, and then there's an additional 3 hours that's focused on the employment and soft skills training. And we've been fortunate that that one instructor was credentialed to teach both ABE and his career technical education industry. I love the iBest model. I'm curious to hear more about it as well, and the funding. But that's what we're doing at our site.
Great, great. And in addition to the webcast, I do want to intersperse to the comments here some of the resources that we do have available via this project. And we do have an online course all around designing contextualized instruction. So let's jump over to funding. Your case, Brian, it's iBest, but how did you leverage funds or design your funding streams or braid your funding streams to get to where you are right now? Because that's always, resources are so scarce, as we know, and that's one of the first questions people always ask.
So in Washington State, the community colleges are all, we are subcontracted with the State Board of Community Technical Colleges, which has an interagency agreement with the Department of Corrections. Because of a really strong relationship between the State Board and the Department of Corrections, and also the legislature, when we started talking about doing iBest funding, those two agencies looked at the model that the community colleges were using, and the community colleges had two models. One is to pay more per FTE, so instead of, say, $5,000 or $4,000 per enrollment, pay $7,000, or to award more FTE per student. So a normal student in an iBest class in a outside of prison course generates 1.75 FTEs. It is very expensive. The reason we're able to get that funding is that our legislature believes that it is an effective program. And research has shown that it's an effective program. And at least in our state, it's the strongest intervention that has moved ABE level students further and faster into college level work. On our local level, we are now funded. It is very expensive, and I have to say that I just break even based on what they fund. By paying us more per FTE. So I don't have there's no magic bullet here to make it work. It really revolved around getting the legislature to believe in it.
Right. Leadership support.
That's something I need to make happen.
I'm going to ask our panelists one more question, or ask them to respond to one more thing, and again, then we're going to open it up for questions from both the live and online audience. The last thing I wanted to ask you all to speak to is employer engagement. Really having employers engaged as a key partner is just absolutely critical to career pathways, whether they're informing these skills that learners need, or they're allowing learners to come into their facilities, whatever that may look like. There's a huge opportunity for employer connection here. So how have you gone about getting employers in your local community engaged to work with you?
You know, that is something that we're always working on. It's not something that's, I think, easy to establish. Traditionally, our teachers have taken that lead role with employers, but there's no one system that makes it work for all programs. And that's something that I would like to see put in place. But I would say that developing employer relations is similar to developing a friendship. You know, when you first meet somebody, you know, you're a little careful about what you say to them. You don't necessarily reach out and give them a hug. You don't, or slap them on the back or any of that. You have to, you start out a little slower. And so we do that with our employers as well. And we invite them to come in and visit the facility. The Sacramento Employment and Training Agency, another partner on that grant, has worked very closely with those employers to make sure that our students connect with them while they're in custody and can continue to connect with them and be able to find internships or employment post-release.
Great.